So I'm Jacqueline, and I'll be the moderator for the panel session later. Today we're looking to explore, why does design matter and how it ultimately betters our everyday lives through the sharings of three people from three different studios. So first up, we have Shing of Lekker Architects. So can you please give a warm round of welcome for her?
Hi. So today I'm going to talk a little bit, just from my point of view, how design has helped to transform one particular industry, and that is the childcare industry. I don't pretend to have any answers to this big question, what is design, but maybe we just talk about three projects that I'll show you today. I'll give you a little bit of insight into how the design work that we did and how when clients value design, how that helped to push the industry childcare forward. So the first project I'm going to show you is Caterpillar's Cove 2. So this is the second of a chain of childcare called Caterpillar's Cove Study and Child Development Center. And it's basically a lab school for NTUC. So it's where they do experimental teaching, and also it's a teaching school. So they have people who are trained by the Seed Institute. They come there and they learn how to teach in this school as well. So our clients found us at that time through Google, strangely enough. I don't know what they Googled, but they found us, and we had zero experience in childcare. The only experience we had in childcare was dropping our kids off at childcare. We had no design for kids at all. It's just that when we started talking, we realized that we talked well and we listened well to each other. And then we did a tour of their school, their first branch, and we just hit it off, okay? So I think that, for me, that's the ultimate success. The key to successful design is when the client and the designer see eye to eye, can talk and listen to each other. So they came to us and they said they wanted a second branch, and they told us about the kinds of goals they had for the space, which was to have children feel ownership over their education, for children to feel like this was a home away from home, for children to learn key skills for the rest of their life, like listening to others and being able to concentrate in a distracted setting or being able to negotiate danger. So they gave us this site, which is on the 4th floor of a big institutional building. And we thought, how on earth can we make a childcare center here? So it's a really simple, almost a childish approach to it. We decided that our ideal situation would be a little preschool in a garden, but we had this, and so we were just going to put a preschool in a garden into that space. And so that's what we did. The big problem, though, is that children, couldn't see out of this because it's taller than any of the kids were, this window height. And so we made all these ways in which the children could look out or climb up and look out the window. So in this case, the one on the left is a periscope, so that they could actually feel like they had control over what they wanted to look at any given time. There were also a lot of different kinds of spaces. So there's a space here which is all enclosed for the younger kids who need a little bit more security, and then there's a big open space here where slightly older kids could, who had a little bit more self-control, would have their classrooms. For that sense of ownership, we decided that all the shoe cabinets would have their own particular shape. So children, immediately when they went in, even though it was a very big and somewhat alienating environment, they would feel that they knew where they belonged. And so this is how the school looks. Our client didn't say that this is what she wanted it to look like. Or they didn't say any of the specific things that had to be in here and how they had to look. But they did give us certain things to go with, which is, for example, that teachers need to be able to hang things like this from the ceiling. And so do we just allow them to put hooks into the ceiling anyhow, or do we give them some sort of a hanging system? Children need to be able to do things from many different perspectives. So we had a lot of mounds, for example. And it was a very interesting process because we talked about how we wanted them to use the space. And so we built a model with little movable bits of furniture, and they actually really enjoyed using that as a tool. It's almost like a dollhouse. We could explain how teachers could reconfigure certain spaces using the movable shelves, for example. So this is a picture of what it's like without too many kids in it. This is a still taken from a video that we made of the space before all the kids came in. There were just, I think, like 10 or 12 being tested, testing out the space. And, you know, we have really touching scenes like this where a teacher would sit with a child who's a little bit shy at the corner in a much smaller space, like that. And you see teachers dressing up the space in their own way. And children really using, we had this big mission not to have any conventional chairs in the space, although, you know, because most parents of primary one kids expect the kids to be able to read and write by the time they're in primary school. So we had to have some tables and chairs. But we had a lot of seating mounts like this. And when we went back to take the video again, you know, when they're listening to stories, children like to lie around in all kinds of different positions, and they're still listening, but the school allowed them to have their own sort of freedom over that space. This is the outdoor play space. This is a big thing for us when we design for kids, is that we try not to give them too much information. We try and give them play prompts as opposed to play, toys that are a little bit too dictatorial of how they should play. So we made things in the play space that was suggestive of however their minds wanted to interpret them. So factory, or like a crocodile, or a theater. So after this project actually went on to win a President's Design Award that year. And I think the reason why it won was that it really made people think about design for children as an important thing, as that children actually deserve good design. And after that, we were commissioned by the Lien Foundation to push this further. So they got us to produce a book. Basically, their mission was that they wanted a book that would change the way people thought about design for preschool. And because Caterpillar's Cove was, you know, a fixed center, and they wouldn't allow so many people to come and go into that space because they have to worry about how the kids were going to deal with it, they had this brilliant idea of making a book. And the book, they printed a couple thousand of them, just gave them out. So they went to government agencies, they went to clients, they went to preschool operators, they just gave these books out for free. And beyond that, they also they made a website where every design is downloadable in PDF, the plans, the views, everything. And the only mission behind this was just to make designs of preschools better. And I mean, that was such an incredible opportunity for us after designing that first school. So what we did was, we also wanted to challenge this idea that, you know, kids deserve to have purpose-built schools. So at that time, children were only relegated to having, you know, spaces under void decks or a unit in a shopping center. There were none, actually, no purpose-built schools at this time. And the CEO of the Lien Foundation was really puzzled by this, because everyone says, oh, the future, you know, it's so critical, those early learning years for children, and yet we don't invest in their environments at all. We invest a lot in primary school. You know, a budget for primary school would be about $40 million, and yet you can't even fork out $4 million to make a preschool. So we decided, you know, because the thing that we keep hearing all the time is that we have no space in Singapore. So what we thought to do was to look for 10 types of spaces in Singapore that were all over the place, ubiquitous, ordinary, but nobody thinks of them as sites. And so I'll just show you some of these. The whole idea here was to just say, you know, in school design, people really believe that the environment is a huge determinant of how you teach. Actually, it's a big resource for how you teach, because you can teach children so many different things, all the values of teamwork and of respect and all of that in any way, right? Through any kind of subject matter. And so we proposed one over the canal, for example, where Kiwi is constantly greening up the canals. And so in this case, children could come down and learn about natural processes, about greening the environment. We did one above an HDB car park, which actually, they built one. ECTA actually commissioned one around the time this book came out, but we won't argue about whose idea came first. They get a bit touchy about that. And then on the beach, so everyone is very insistent in all preschools that there should be a big sand pit in the school. So we thought, why not just put the whole school on sand? And the children can learn from being directly on the beach. This one is on the water. So this is in Sengkang waterway. So as the water level rises and falls, children can actually play in that water. And then this last one is an idea to put it actually on the NUS campus, in which we want the whole thing to be self-contained, and so we put the playground inside the school. And the way in which children move from space to space inside the school is via the playground, so there are no conventional steps. And so after that, we were asked to do this school, which was incredible. It was the first inclusive preschool in Singapore. And this is where environment has a huge role to play, because the idea here is AWA were a preschool operator. They operated a school for kids with disabilities. They wanted to make an inclusive preschool. So the big question here is how do you do that, and how can design help to actually make that acceptable in the eyes of parents of typically developing kids? So an inclusive preschool, this one in Singapore, has a 30-70% quota. So 30% is for atypically developing kids, so kids with ASD, or they have visual impairment, and so it's a whole range, as long as they're not too medically, it's not too medically complicated to the point where they cannot be managed by non-medical staff. And so, in a typical school for kids who need physical therapy or occupational therapy, this is the kind of equipment that you see. And the school was really worried that parents of typically developing kids would think, I don't want to send my kid to a school where, half the time the teachers are focusing on putting children with special needs on these kinds of equipment, and they're not concentrating on my child. So what we decided to do was actually take some of those, the goals of some of that equipment, and put them into beautiful sort of landscape settings within the classrooms that would allow all the children to play together in the same way. And so while a child is having physical therapy, another one can just sit next to them and on the same piece of furniture. So in order to keep the sensory stimulation low but still attractive, we had a whole series of color studies to make sure that we were getting environments that were soothing. Hammocks are a big, and swings are a big component in helping children to deal with losing balance. And so we have a lot of hammocks in here. So when they're trained to go on a swing, they get accustomed to losing their sense of balance, and then it helps them with development of all kinds of things, including reading. So reading, apparently, one of the key things is to develop a sense of core strength. In a lot of the children who have issues with core strength, once they have that, then their reading improves greatly. So all of these things were incorporated into here. And what happened was that after 3 years, the school has a huge waiting list, and we do not have that sense of, of children feeling ostracized or being alienated because they're going into some sort of a clinical environment. There's this amazing, I don't have a picture of it, but Superhero Me, which is this amazing organization that goes around, and they have followed up on the school by going in there and taking videos over the years. They told us about a child who has seeing difficulties and how she follows this path. So this is a kind of a cue to how to move through the school, and it's basically just a change in texture on the ground. It's dark, yes, but it's a change in texture as well, because the kids walk around barefoot. And whenever she walks this line to go to the bathroom, all the kids get in line behind her. None of them walks off the line. And this is one of the very interesting things that I think we will talk about later, is how does your environment actually influence the way that you behave, and how does it influence the way that you behave as a group. Children instinctively are kind and team players, and I think that in this particular school that is very much valued, and the children are encouraged to continue behaving that way. So here's a play. This is actually not really abstract at all. It's a car, but what's nice about it is that all the chairs can be taken out. All these, and kids in wheelchairs and buggies can also go in and be the driver. So the entire environment is manipulable. For example, this is a maze, which is also a big seating pad. and the children can reconfigure it how they like, and this is also part of the whole therapy, basically squeezing through small spaces and learning how to balance. So this is pictures of the school without any kids in there. They're very sensitive to having their actual students photographed. Another part of this, I'm going to end here, but this is basically the playground. And this was to be an inclusive playground. So we have a tree house, which is accessible by a ramp. And the ramp goes all the way up to this point here, this lookout point around a big existing old tree. And all the kids can go and sit there together. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Shing. I think the one thing that stood out for me was the concept of the notion that you help people reconsider that children deserve good design, which then the question in my head, actually who deserves good design? Do we even think about that? Yeah. So next up we have the two girls from Fellow, so Izzy and Iffah. So can we welcome them on stage?
Alright, cool. Hi, thanks for inviting us down here today, and also hello everyone. I'm Izyanti, and I'm Iffah. So we started Fellow about 3 years ago, so we're quite a young studio. And we started technically as print designers, because that's what design schools teach you last time, like when you're in school, you just print. But so far what we've ended up doing is a lot of exhibition design, and specifically exhibition design in public spaces. So that is the perspective that we're going to be bringing you today in tackling this very broad question of what is design. In the years that we've been working with exhibition design, we realized that to do a good job, we need to directly engage with content as provided by the curator, and also interrogate, I suppose, the framework that you're bringing that content. And for that purpose, for us to design is twofold. It is to distill, and it is also to dig for depth.
Okay, so moving on to what exactly design is to distill, we have to identify what exactly is what's the crux of the so-called brief that we're given, that was presented to us. And one way on how we actually learned how to do that was for this project Proposals for Waterloo. This was a project that was from Open House, and it was under the Noise Apprenticeship program, right? Yeah. So if you have been to Waterloo, you realize how rigid this place is, and it's actually quite confusing because there are houses, there are also commercial spaces, and there are community spaces. Community spaces, which means there's a multi-purpose hall, and then there's just the place is just trying to do so much things, and then so you have such rigidity, and then now you are putting in another layer of thing that you have to do, which is to host art, let's say. Yeah. So so actually we didn't know what we had to do. So we walked around the whole entire Waterloo, just trying to investigate what are these rigid areas. So we started noticing all the staircases, and you can see all the narrow corridors that was happening in Waterloo. And then this whole entire staircase here is actually where the artworks are going to be placed. So if you are visiting the exhibition, you kind of have like the one very linear way of going from the start and end all the way at the bottom. So it's very rigid.
It's very didactic.
Yeah, it's very didactic. Yes. So we try very hard to like understand what is this whole entire space about. Then as we walk around, again we are intruding everybody's spaces because it is a home space and there are offices that people are working day to day. So we realize that there's this audacity of public art. Is it an intervention or is it actually an interference? Yes. So with that, we worked on the concept of, these are actually wayfinding that was happening around the whole entire Waterloo itself.
Like the way we were engaged in the space went through like gradual means, like we had more gentle wayfinding.
Correct. Yeah, but again, we try to create that discomfort with juxtaposing places from other parts of Waterloo into, so there's that transparency and hence that confusion of it. Yeah, that discomfort that we're trying to create again before the refining.
Make confused.
Yes, make confused, which is the Yeah. Then certain parts where we actually even put it up on staircases. And then we had our main branding wall. This is actually piercing the This whole pillar here is actually an existing structure of Waterloo. So what we did was built around it. So it seems as though art is piercing through the space, which is exactly what we're trying to see here. Yeah. And then we did this floor speaker.
Yep.
Yes, which is actually the image of the building going up. But so as you are in that confined space, you will feel this very weird vertigo of like going up and down. And
So this was quite popular for a while or so. I think the residents of the buildings were like giving feedback to open house, saying, "Hey, we really like the art that we've done. Like the sticker very nice." Then we realized like maybe that was a point where we overstepped boundaries because we were not actually the artists.
yes.
But I think like creating that sense of dislocation also echoed like the sense of having public art in all the stairwells and how you were diverting so many visitors into what is actually public, is common space for the residents and workers there.
So we thought the moment the show is over, all these things will be removed. But yes, like 3 days ago, our friend just said that, hey, it's still there. And apparently, I think there was some request of like making more of these stickers.
So the fact that the sticker is still there, creating discomfort for all the residents beyond the exhibition, I think is a distillation of how audacious public art can be, because nobody asked for this. This was supposed to last for like 2 weekends max. But town council decided that they liked it, and so now the residents are dealing with it. So we're sorry, that was not supposed to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then we started moving on because like we were wondering why Waterloo was there. So who built the structures and why? So responsible guy is this person called Dr. Lekker, and he believes that there's a he's a strong believer that physical environment can affect the lifestyle of people.
The reason also why we went into city planning is because that really is the foundation for a lot of the principles about how and why we live the way we do. So we really did have a very good time researching into the archives of URA to find out the basis of why or what they actually wanted our society to be.
Yeah.
So Dr. Lekker is a really great writer. You should read up all his interviews.
So after with all the information that we had, so we actually created little interactive areas where we try to question the visitors coming into the exhibition. So we have those panels there was just information of what we learned, and then we have this map on the floor that kind of try to identify if you are coming down to Waterloo Centre, how do you actually cross the road? So as you can see here, nobody takes the traffic light, which is at the all four corners, because technically urban planning is supposed to allow safely you to cross the road.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Moving on.
So what you can infer from like the data points that we got here is like who the exhibition eventually was able to target. Did open house manage to bring in the actual residents into the space, or was it a very external audience? And honestly, the map sticker is really an internal argument that we were having as a studio, because they believe that all the audience would come in from a certain way, and I wanted to prove a point that everybody actually just jaywalks, because the blocks are too long and the streets are just narrow enough that everybody will jaywalk.
Things we learn. Okay, then we actually use the
The
pipe, to measure how often do people visit the museums, especially for the residents who are living there. What do they make of the museums that are around them? How are they integrated into the whole entire plan of that art district?
And also thinking about it now, also what we realized is that those museums were actually schools.
Yes.
So it's also quite fascinating that those schools that are now in very historical buildings was what made it a very diverse cityscape of that area.
Okay, so I guess the idea is that if we kind of understand how Waterloo exists, or how the structures of how Waterloo actually happened there, it gives us a bigger idea of the microcosm of the city. So
Okay, so then the next principle that we try and follow when we're developing work is to design to dig for depth. And the project that we feel really encapsulated this was State of Motion 2018. A lot was being asked of a history that is only familiar to a specific audience here. For example, if I showed these images, what does this mean to a large audience? And if I showed these numbers, which are years, basically, what does it mean to you? And even if I told you that those years represented the golden era of Malay filmmaking, how relevant and how much can you take away from that fact? So those were the considerations that we had in mind in developing State of Motion, Sejarahku, which means mind history. So the question is about like whose history it actually is. And to summarize the entire thing, basically the golden era of Malay filmmaking is relevant to all of Singapore because this was happening during pre-independence time, and the films then were therefore a reflection of society as a whole, considering as well that people basically everybody is consuming Malay culture, because Malay language. So it's not only within the niche community, so it is, it's a Singapore thing. So we're trying to redistribute that identity or that ownership. So the first thing that we do is how do we craft the story with the curator? And this is what we got from the curator, this Word document in a table format. It's very skimpy. If you can see, we can see here. These are basically the content that she gave us, which is, if you want to imagine it from a design perspective, that's like your key visual for every section that she wants to talk about. But that means nothing because we don't know what those films mean or what she's trying to bring out via the topic. So instead, what we helped her do was we had conversations with her, and then we helped to create a flow of how she would want to organize and tell that story. So we're crafting the narrative together with her. And once she had this, she was able to create this, which is like, that is all the flesh of the exhibition in itself. And so, I've extracted some of the headers of the sections here. And you can see how now that she has that structure, she's able to develop the headers of those sections that are really truly relatable to everyone. So that is one way. So now that we have relatable content, we can then take the next step to crafting the experience. So again, what we did here was we tried to understand what are the archetypes that appear in Malay filmmaking. So we have the leading man. More often than not, people can still recognize Piramli. We have a leading lady as well. Most of the time, Saloma, but generally like a beehive, got like 50s clothes and everything.
The trend of the time.
It's a trend line, but that is the vibe. And then you also have the maternal figure somewhere in the narrative. Sometimes she's good and then dies tragically, or she's evil, and both is important archetype. And then also we understand the context of how Malay films are consumed, which we can say that it was like cinema making or like watching cinema, but to be honest, for a lot of us, we watched it on reruns on like Malaysian channels in living rooms that are very domestic and full of tactility and soft fabrics. So that is also something we brought to the picture. And also something that in discussion with the curator, what is the nature of history, which is that it's very hard to grasp. You can't actually make firm conclusions out of history. And if that's the case, right, if history does not allow for firm conclusions, then the only way to negotiate around it is that circularity. You have to like create multiple points of entry for people to come up with multiple perceptions of what is available, keeping in mind the gaps and hope for possible convergence. Which is also why in the earlier KV of like the portraits, everybody's like looking behind, because you can't see the face, because you don't know what the face of Malay films really are, what is the context of that. So this is the eventual KV, key visual of the logo. You have the fabrics involved that we embroidered, digitally embroidered text on. And then we have, okay, so this was also the mandala factor that we have about the spatial design of the exhibition. So that's what we have here. So that there are multiple points of entry that people can come through. Yeah. So this is also, we also included that sense of circularity through the social media assets that we have. Let me try and pull up Facebook. Personally, I really enjoy, I don't know whether we were able to implement, so like the post that we included itself would force people to have to explore the circular nature of the images. So it's a lot more fun if you can follow me around.
It's the idea of like finding things that was very difficult to identify and to look at.
Yeah, and then for instance, like sometimes we would cue in actual information of the events for people to then really have to like dig out, which really was an echo of the curator's experience with the researchers as well as the artists trying to make sense of the spaces that were given to create their installations. Yeah. So then we have the sliders as well, sense of continuity throughout. And then also, not to make things too confusing, we also have more straightforward narrative excerpts of what was the content on the exhibition site in itself. So these are some images of the site at NLB, where you can see that we tried to have different ways of addressing content, whether it's on tabletop, so that it's a bit less intimidating, so people could spend more time with it, or also then you have the textile. We brought softness and brought like better carpeting into the weaving, and also large images for people to engage with. And it was really rewarding to see these photos from AFA themselves, because I think they adopted the motif of the key visual. So they took photos of everybody from the back, which was really sweet and unexpected of them. But yeah, so you see information and also images, and also this is one of the small panels that, small cell spaces where people could look at all the films that were produced during those 20 years of that golden era. It also was part of the, this is also part of the tour that is part of State of Motion as well. So in this case, we created
Framework of stuff.
yeah, like a framework to guide the experience along through the art that was created as well. So these were like the contextual touch points that we were able to make. Which leads us, I suppose, to the final question, like why do we do what we do, which is to wrestle with art and culture, which we also know like does not pay the most and is different layers of frustration as well. Let me just double check. Oh, okay, cool. So why we do what we do is like in the conventional sense of design briefs, we find that a lot of the time, design briefs require to follow this route. You want that one message. You want the audience to receive a certain impression. Make sure they don't go around with the wrong messaging. A very clear, clarity kind of idea. You want to make sure marketing will not put like a drop shadow on the logo. But I think with the approach that we have found with art and culture, what you get instead is something like that, which is via distilling, you are able to zoom out. Yeah, you can zoom out and like see the patterns that emerge from the relationships that we have as individuals or between institutions and organizations. And once you are able to do that, once you can, those patterns emerge, you create the depth, you dig out the depth for people to explore those patterns and find out how exactly we really are just very, very many different individuals.
But we're still connected while we're at the...
Yeah. So ideally, in all our slogging for art and culture, the altar of art and culture, that maybe we will just become better people. That's our humble hope for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have Larry of Asa'ari, and yeah, so we just welcome him on stage.
Okay, thanks for having me here. Sorry, I didn't really read their brief. So they just told me that because I'm the guy who always worked with old brands, traditional brands, and I managed to spin things around, make a profit, make a name. So they thought like, it's a cool way one, old place, but we're all moving towards the future and you can do your thing here. So then when I realized in the end, when I about to come here, what is design? Oh my God, like, to be honest, I'm not gonna go into that now. But I've prepared one client's work and I'll just run through it. So if you see something from there, you can ask me about it, or if you get an essence out of it, then probably that's design to me, to share with the world. I'm just going to show you this project that we just finished not long ago. In fact, I think it just reached a year for Tongheng. It's not far from here, Chinatown. This is the original logo here. Very interestingly, the next generation has taken over, and the next generation is not exactly millennial. And the owners are still very hands-on, and they are quite senior already. So the project itself is very, very risky for us because the owner actually designed it herself many, many years ago. You see these words here, they're all handwritten by her as well. So it's like a baby and she's still running it. So what happened was that it was a little convincing to do. We met up very often, a few times before we got the project. And eventually, guess how I got the project? It's because of this thing here. The Chinese word, that's how it's written here. And she turned into this. Can you guys see what's this thing? Anybody? Make a guess? No, right, it's just Chinese word. But she asked me, what do you see this? Or what comes to mind when you look at this? I say, oh, this is like a Guan Mao. It's the ancient China, how the head of the officers look. And she was totally surprised. She said nobody on earth could tell this except you. Then I got a project. Not because I won this award, whatever, she couldn't be bothered with it. So anyway, this is how it looked. Personally, I love this place, and like what I said in the beginning, I love to tackle all the old brands, old companies, and especially a lot of baggage. But why I'm interested is not just because of tradition, because fundamentally all the clients I work with, there's a good in them. Like I just finished a direct funeral as well. It's a nice one. It's not an easy business where you have to shadow people in different religious funeral. You gotta see how the staff do things. You gotta attend many funerals. So anyway, I'm not gonna talk about sad things. I'm gonna talk about happy things here. So let me see. Yeah, that's the brief. There are a lot of things that went on, but there were 3 things they want us to do. That's the first one. We need new audiences. This is the current poor people. And when they raise 10 cents, dang. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Hello. Okay, they keep nagging, so they kind of like, it's rising costs and so on and so forth. We need the new audiences to come on board. And we want to share our joy. They're really happy doing what they do. But it's kind of like naive, like we just do what we do. Do you like it? The only reason you listen to the old folks because they're your granny or your grandfather. Otherwise, like, doesn't bother me. So how do you, make people listen to you and spread the joy? And we need to stay relevant, right? Traditionally they hold a lot of cash. The orders are taken through the phone, and like, okay, you're good, you're okay, sort of thing. So summarizing it very simply, I told them, okay, you need new audiences, not just the young, but retain the old ones, and hopefully they stop nagging about the 10 cents or 20 cents rise in the price. And this one, I actually studied the Happy Meal with them. It's actually a crappy meal, but what makes everybody so happy going to McDonald's? Because of the notion that you're happy, right? And I always ask my kids, do you enjoy the meal? Yeah, I enjoy it. Is it tasty? I think I prefer the whatever menu. But why didn't you order it? Because it's not part of the Happy Meal. So we try to figure out how to deal with that. And I said, well, you need to stay relevant. You've already got it because you've got mobile phones, you've got all these gadgets. So let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just turn on traditional methods into the current ones. Very simple, 3 steps, let's get it done. And that's our new brand mark for them. I'm not going to go too much into the design of it, but basically, what's the big deal here is that this Xing is, in Chinese, it means elation, happiness. And what I found out through all the shadowing and workshops and discovery is that why we eat dessert is not because we want to fill our stomach. Maybe a lot of us do, but it makes us happy. And why they go through weekends, I mean, Monday to Sunday, doing all these things day and night, because passion, yes, but it makes them happy. And one of the ladies, 2 bosses, her name is Constance and Rebecca. And Auntie Constance is really cool because every time I'm meeting with her, I will look at her sneakers. She loves Converse, that's her favorite brand. She always has like multicolored ones, and she's got like little bones and doggy on her blouse. So, I mean, she's really happy, and it shows in all her pastries and stuff. So, the whole point is focus on the happiness, and I summarize the whole brand essence for them. It's the fact that once you take a bite, there should be joy in it. So the color schemes are all designed this way as well. Yeah. And you noticed earlier that eco is 1 mouth here inside the sink. And that's how we came up with all the ideas. Yeah. These are all the traditional pastry. So what's interesting was that their number 1 top seller is egg tart. Second top seller, coconut egg tart, followed by the rest. And we actually tried all the rest and we said, oh, they're great, but they look old. But on the contrary, we're not about to change how it looks. So we had devised a way to make it sell more without changing how the pastries look. I'll share with you in a minute. These are some of the graphics that we've put together in the photography and so on and so forth. And lots of diamond, which is inspired by the egg tart, the shape of the egg tart itself. So they need 3 boxes for 3 occasions. So we refused to do that fancy hipster sort of thing going on. So we actually went back and forth with them many, many times over this. First time they saw it, they were like, what's happening here? Because in Singapore, there's a Malay word called cacat, means half baked. So these graphics look half baked to them. And it looks like comics and fun. But I went on and tell them all the stories about all this little thing. And your egg tart is actually made of the sun, love, shine, and egg yolk, and the mountains, and the da-da-da. And this is exactly the shape of your dad cake. And then, look at this is your logo. And your words are here, blah, 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 blah. And they went like, oh my god, so this is the egg tart box. It's made of cardboard, so it's quite easy to produce and not too expensive. And they needed 1 for wedding. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, they're very famous for their wedding pastries. And, what do you call that? 满月, first month for baby shower. So this is a very important box for them. So when you get married, you can buy all the stuff from them. So we can look closely at the food and the sea and the magpies and da-da-da-da. And then you have the mooncake box here. So if you look, the colors all matches. So they dye over the colors here, like we went back and forth as well. So in the end, we went a little bit like a dark Tiffany-ish looking thing. And the bag itself needs to look happy. So you walk across the road, tourists, locals, it's gonna look like, wow, what's that, man? So this is what we did. Yeah, and I make sure that you can see the beautiful box, even if you hold it. Wow, super hip material here. Terrazzo. My Italian friend, architect, was lamenting to me that it's such a cheap material and what the hell happened? So expensive now. Kaya, one of my favorite things. They've got like coconut and nyonya, blah, blah. So we cut through this, see-through stickers. Yeah, photography, yummy, very nice. And station dictionaries and wow, look, your handwritten thing. It's everywhere. But I mean, to be very honest, it's not just curry favor. I mean, personally, I love it very much. And it was a struggle for me because I love the logo a lot. But the reason why I changed it because it's very hard to be used small and big, and a lot of people I tested on cannot really read it. So that's the main reason why I changed it. Not because of ego. Instagrammable. Yeah, very nice. Oh, wedding stuff. What are mooncakes? Or just the photography, and this is how it looks now. It still looks very traditional. On the outside, a bit more pop and simplified things so that you can reproduce them in single colors and multi-colors as well. I managed to convince them to use like designer Vitra chairs. Just kept it hush-hush, they didn't know it was Vitra. And even the light box itself is, went back and forth with authorities. Cannot be too wide, too long, and try to play cheap by sticking this out a little bit. Ultimately, it was supposed to be double the size, but we couldn't get it, then we reduced to half the size. Do take a look at night when you're around there. And this one, I wanted a big logo here. No, cannot. You can only have this here. But then you look opposite, all the logos are like this big. So, yeah. Anyway. So yeah, this is a nice thing that I'm giving a talk here. I don't know where's the mirror here, maybe the first floor, but it's a throwback to all the Hui one actually. They always have names written on it, like all the founders and all the big deal words, they have to put it there. So it's very good feng shui as well. So I actually included this big mirror and I hidden all the illustrations like treasures in there. So part of the thing, part of this usage is also for children because they host a lot of talks, heritage tours, STBs, and school children will come and eat egg tarts and talk about heritage. Then you'll make them see, look for magpie, look for this, look for that, and they will really have fun doing it. And this one, again, another cha-cha looking thing that's like the old Western bar sort of look. Actually, the main purpose is we could fold this on Chinese New Year and they could take away all this and put all their goodies and sell more things. It's a very narrow space. This scallop looking wall, all the traditional places tend to have it. And currently it's very hip, so we convinced them like, why don't you bring back the old element and it looks very Instagrammable, and true enough, a lot of people take pictures here. Yeah. And we even did like custom thing for them so they can replace as and when they want. And this is what I was talking earlier. Actually, we didn't change how the pastries look, but we designed fancy trays and we space them out and then we swap them every now and then. So the customers, it's all dealing with how people feel and how people react to things. So when they come in, first thing they always see egg tarts. Now we move the egg tarts further away here and there. And the results show that the rest of the pastries all went up by a lot. I don't have the statistics yet, but I have some statistics for the business. Even this thing, we custom make the lighting with like, egg tart shapes. So I realized a lot of times when they order things, they look at the menu, then nothing to do, they look up. Then they see this. Wow, maybe I should buy one more egg tart. And you see the floors, the little black egg tarts as well. And this terrazzo, I haven't really mentioned it. Yes, it's very hip, but what happens is when I show it to the ladies, they say, oh yeah, like my Clementi HDB and my, I said precisely, we picked this because it looks like all the cheap materials back then. If you go next door, the new cool Strix Clan, they have lots of terrazzos too. And so a lot of things like, I paid a bomb for this thing and it's great keeping the food, can we not change this? Okay, we make it taller for you. And here you can actually lay your things and all. So everything was designed, right, with no more space bottom and I had to put it up here. Below there's a lot of storage as well. And the great thing was all the bloggers, everybody started writing about it. We actually introduced social media agencies to them, PR, And they say, well, we spent a bomb on you guys, right? I don't want any more. So can we grow it organically? We say, okay, we help you just post nice things, talk about nice stuff. And yeah, it worked. And 2018 years is over for them. The revenue grew by 23%, considering the fact they did nothing, no money spent on advertising or social media or anything else. It's quite a good result. And you can see the Instagram, my team did a good job. So cool and cute, right? So I tested on my daughter and son. Wow, so happening now. I want to go and eat. So it grew by about 5 times. I don't think it's as many as foreign design policy. I think you're the champion in the world. But it's good. It's a big deal for them, actually. So, yeah, there's an example of how it looks. We, by looking at the data and the followers, we actually propose things about like how to cook things and how to have quizzes and schools out, because a lot of the students love their things, but they are so far out and they're very conservative. They don't want to open a lot of branch. So we have incentives for students to come, things like that. And Chinese New Year actually went down, or like about -10 or flat yearly. And this year, the Chinese New Year sales it was over, and they reported a 12.5% increase, and that's really, really happy. Yeah, and then they were sweating, and all the auntie hair and uncle hair not cool, and we designed this for them. And what's great about it was the fact that they only have people coming for interviews, like old ladies and old uncles, before the rebranding. And right now, a lot of young cool people are working there. Yeah, and I didn't have the slide, but in front you can actually write your name, because some of them are students, part-timers. So everyone's talking about it. Very good for them. Free publicity. And that's the lady Constance I was telling you about. You can see her, say hello. And maybe look at her sneakers, whether she's wearing cool Converse. Yeah, that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll start with a few questions addressed to each of them on the panel, and after that we'll open the floor to questions as well. So the first question is actually addressed to Izyanti and Iffah. So the angle for your design processes seems to commonly result in a lot of open-endedness, or leaving people to make their own conclusions on their own. How do you decide when to be divergent and when to be convergent as you work on the project?
Okay, so I would say it isn't either or situation. We feel that it's usually helpful to create a common ground of understanding first. So that is where we focus the content into a sense of converged ideas. But then after that, we will bring up like alternate ideas or facts or images that maybe counter that perspective a bit. So that's where people can break open a bit to diverge. And then for another exhibition, our interactive stuff.
Yeah, so what happens is that usually, so that is if we have like a so-called focus conclusion to it. But usually, if for example an exhibition requires it to be more open-ended, we actually leave certain kind of questions for them to live with. So it kind of gives them a point of reflection of where they could expand their ideas into. Yeah.
Or like in cases where we give ideas for digital interaction, what the exhibition gives is a very curated point of view. It's framed by the captions and the wall text and everything. But then we have spaces where, in terms of like tablets or giant displays that they can interact and find out more information, those are instances where there isn't so much of a curator's voice. So then they're kind of like overlapping those perspectives together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And on the point of reflection, so the next question is for Shing actually. So from the perspective of reflection and with the work that you've done, what do you think is the role or the power of design in shaping societal values?
I think when it comes to kids, I mean, anecdotally, from looking at what has happened with the inclusive school, I think it's huge. And I think especially for kids, because they're so observant, I guess. They notice everything and they respond to it. It's a little bit harder designing for adults. I mean, we obviously design for adults as well, and I think you have to be a little bit more sort of assertive, and you have to really bring out all the stops a little bit more.
Harder because they're not so receptive to it?
Well, I think that we don't notice so much, and we don't really feel as sort of, I don't know, I think we're a bit more set in our ways, so we don't really respond to that cues in our environment as well. But watching children is remarkable. I mean, I think anybody who has kids, you just see the way that your kids can interpret any space in a very sort of refreshing way. I mean, it's beautiful to watch life through the eyes of kids. But for the inclusive school, it's been incredible because you hear, I mean, you can read it up. You just, Google inclusive education in Singapore, and you hear the stories of parents of typical kids, or parents of atypically developing kids, and the stories that they tell of, the sort of the kindnesses and the teamwork and the not seeing difference, and also the sort of really, the sort of considerateness that these kids have who, are educated in that kind of setting. I think it's really, it speaks for itself. I think, obviously, it's not just the design, it's the fact of educating children together like that, but the design helps because it teaches them that, they are all treated the same, and they will all have the same environments to grow up and play in.
Thank you for your answer. Moving from really young kids in childcare to, let's now talk about older people in traditional family businesses. So this question is for Larry. So how do you view the importance of rebranding exercises for traditional, for example, family-run businesses and businesses with their heritage?
I think it's as simple as, I'm going to borrow this from my client. We kind of thought about how to answer customers when they come and complain about like the hike in prices and the fancy new store. So the owner actually told the audience that, yeah, I agree with you that the older shop is much better than this one. And the older folks says, yeah, I told you, why do you guys go and renovate and do all this fancy thing? And then she will follow by saying, but it's due for renovation, things are falling apart, it's dirty, we may not pass the health authorities check next round, so on and so forth. So, it's just like our house, if it's due for renovation, you're probably not gonna spend lots of money trying to look like 1950s, right, or 1940s. It might cost a lot more. So might as well adopt new technology, goes with the time, and right now it's better, it's faster. Now you see, you can order online, your kids can order more, and can bring it back to you, Deliveroo and so on and so forth. And they went like, oh, okay, good. I mean, in a way, I think that sums up that question. Well, a lot of times you say it's a matter of survival, but I think if you're crappy and there's no point being, don't extend your crap. But if you're good, you need to do something about it so that it's almost like you want people to look at your pants, maybe you should buy off-white Nike sneakers, and they go, wow, like a fancy shoe undercover, and then I look at your pants. So in a way, you've got good stuff, but you might need to work around certain strategies so that you have a life beyond just a number or just what it is right now.
I like that. It's really back to the essence of what they stand for and who they are as well.
Yeah, and that's something that I always dig very deep to find out from each client. It's like my analogy, I always tell my team and the clients about chicken essence. I'm not a big fan of it. I was forced to drink it when I was a kid. But in every brand I work with, I always try to imagine like a corporation, big and small. If you summarize it into this essence of chicken, how do you look like? How do you taste like? And after I drink it, what's the effect? And after I throw it away, and 3 years later, after drinking it every day, it's like, oh my god, now I'm so good, And how would you remember it? And then the next day, you just decide that I'm not gonna do it anymore, I'm gonna retire. How will you be missed? Does it matter if you disappear the next day? Most probably not. A lot of brands.
I think that's a very good test of whether they should last or not. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. So now we open the floor to questions. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question for Shing about the process of design. So it's a little bit of a small question, and I wonder if probably you can expound overall. But how did you realize that the kids were not tall enough to see out of the windows? And with that, could you tell me a bit more about how you go about understanding, both what your client needs, but also what the people that you're designing for, what they need?
Yeah, I mean, that's a super interesting question. I mean, one of the ways in which we have developed as an office is I think that we design a lot actually now for clients that are not involved as part of the design process. So children, they're never involved. They never come to the table. They never tell you how they feel about what you're designing for them. We are doing a lot of, we did a nursing home design, now we're doing a hospice center. We're not going to talk to the people who are actually patients of the hospice. I mean, not because we don't want to, but they're just not, that's not how the project is set up. And so it's actually quite alarming. In the case of having children of our own, I think that really, really helped. Somehow, I mean, becoming a parent is a life-changing thing, and it somehow propels you back to your own childhood. For me, I have very strong memories of my physical environment when I was a child, and the sort of impact that spaces had on me. My husband the same, and we worked together. And so I think that really helped to inform the way that we approached it. But so I think what's really important is to find your way into understanding your client. I mean, whether it's through sort of honing your empathy or finding ways of putting yourself in that position where you can empathize and really understand what their experience needs to be. I mentioned at the beginning of my talk that the client, the person who's actually commissioning the project, you need to be able to speak and listen to each other. And I think the moment you hear that they have something to say and they actually have insight into that particular project, and they actually have something meaningful to give, they can become a very powerful director of that. But when they don't, I mean, we've done plenty of childcare for people who are really doing it more as a business, or people who are just interested in giving a slightly different offering, everything's organic, but they're not really thinking about the child. The outcome is, that's why I didn't show any of those projects. The outcome is never as good. So, finding the right way to talk to being able to talk and listen with your client, I think that's a big way into it.
That answer your question. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, so then I'll just I'll ask this question addressed to all of you, and this will probably be our last question for the session. So sometimes things are done for different brands and different clients, and probably, for example, for clients that are not shown here, where they are risk adverse when it comes to design decisions. Can you share an example of when you managed to persuade a client to break past that and to be open to a new way forward or the true essence of design?
Hello. Okay. One particular project that we had for the National Library was one called Numbers and Niches, which is for the arts programming team for all the public libraries. It's an existing project. What they had was these booths that would appear in all of the different regional libraries. So these are important because not everybody goes to the central library in Bugis, so these are really like your homegrown audience. What you're trying to do is to introduce different aspects of the arts collection to as wide an audience as possible. So when we came into the project already existed in such that they had a booth, but then we found out that the librarians were having trouble always moving it in and out from the warehouse space to the public space because it was designed with no handles, it was too tall, it was full of sharp corners. And then the booklet that was being given was actually a series of postcards, which didn't give enough room for the content in itself. So that was what they had in mind. They wanted to do an A5 booklet, and they didn't want to redo the booth because it was only like 1 year. Yeah, they didn't want to give money to like make a new thing that they already had. So what we did instead was come to a story about making it much more usable for the librarians to have to deal with it themselves. So we redesigned the booth so that it was really much more of a trolley. We created clear spaces where then they could put in the books that they wanted to display, and also made it a lot more interactive. And from the A5 booklet, the postcards that were being given out, what we did instead was like do these like really small A6, like half of that size or even tinier, like a very handheld thing, which initially they were very cynical or skeptical about because it was too small. Like how would it create that space? But what we told them and what the results eventually showed is that people actually started collecting these issues because there was a specific identity to it, and they liked how brief it was. In fact, like the A5 size was a bit too much space considering it was really more of a brief summary of a certain topic.
So you switched the usability of the
Yes.
items.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that.
I mean, I'll just add that I think it's very important thinking about what is design. You're not just answering the brief. Sometimes you have to help make it, because it's not always something that makes a lot of sense and will not really contribute to any greater good. I mean, you talk about being better, making things better. We had this hilarious brief once from the Singapore American School. They had, as with any big school, they have, children who are in the school who pass away from accidents or whatever, or teachers, or people who were ex-students. Sometimes the family would donate a plaque and say, oh, please remember my child in the school. And so they came to us and they said, can you design us a garden that commemorates these kids who've been lost? And then at the same time, they went and asked all of the students in the school, and they said, what else do you want this place to be? And they're like, oh, we want it to be a stage and a butterfly garden and a sundial, and there should be a fountain, and it was, it's everything, right? But then we were thinking, okay, fine, we can do the stage and the butterfly garden and, all that stuff, but who's gonna want to go there if it just commemorates children who have died tragically? I mean, it's just so awfully sad. So, we thought and thought about it and then told them, we think this is a really bad idea, and actually you should make it a memory garden as opposed to a memorial garden, and you should commemorate all the good things as well as all of the bad things that happened. And so it became a much bigger project because we had to find many more events, and it had to go from the past and into the future. But I think it was vital to making that place actually a place that anybody would want to go to on the campus. And so, design, we've got to always think about whether the brief is actually makes sense,
and
or
whether
whether
it's
you've got to intervene at that level.
just reminding them to be human again.
Yeah,
Right,
you
in
can
that
lose
sense.
sight of that. Yeah.
Thank you. And how about for you, Larry?
Sorry, I lost the question.
So, for example, sometimes clients are risk adverse. So,
Alright.
yeah.
Okay. There are many ways around it. I can't remember what I always use, but I think I use a lot of distraction, or like, how to put it, because I self-proclaim I'm very good with people, especially older ones. So take for instance like the Dong Heng project, right? They traditionally like cram as many things as possible because in their mindset, they see everything, they want to buy everything.
More worth it also.
Yeah, but for us, how do we convince them by showing less you can actually sell more? Huh? So I kind of like work with the cabinet maker and always say like, hey, more shelves, like. And so in the drawing they went like, oh, so how many can I keep here? We said like, oh, how many hundreds of them below? Wow, I used to be able to keep only this. Now it's so many more. Then after that, when it was built, then the top level, we started putting the trays and all, and they start putting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows of them, and then we slowly take out less. And then during the opening, we went in and just took things out and put it below. Oh, where all the stuff there? Here, below. And we're like, oh, then everybody's like, wow, what's this? And then things moved, and they start to see the results. So like what Shing said, maybe sometimes you just gotta show them, but sometimes you gotta play some magic. And, it's kind of like do this, do that first. Oh look, what's that? And and things start to happen, and then you realize, oh, it's working. Do more. Yeah, you're right. So I mean, that's one strategy. There are still many more behind.
Unrevealable.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing, and can we just thank the speakers for their time today and all of you as well.